the real missed opportunity that I see for just about every category business is this whole idea of strategic partnering. I mean, there are so many businesses, a lot of times, a customer might be able to refer one or two people to you, but the right strategic partner might refer 500 or put you in front of thousands of people who could come to know you. And there's a bit of borrowed trust.
Welcome to the Natural Products Marketer Podcast. I'm Tina.
And I'm Amanda, and we're here to make marketing easier for natural products businesses so you can reach more people and change more lives.
Hi there, and welcome back to Natural Products Marketer Podcast. And today, Amanda, I'm so excited. One of my good friends, John Jantsch, is joining us for the podcast today. And I have known him now for, 4 years. We met at a retreat, and he is just like chicken soup for the marketer's soul, I think. I just love everything about interacting with him.
Yeah, this was my first time meeting him, and I would definitely agree with that just after just a short conversation. So definitely worth sticking around. In the episode today, we talked about the customer journey, how to grow your business and using strategic partnerships and referrals to do that. So stay tuned and enjoy this episode.
John Jantsch, I'm so excited to have you with us today because I use your customer journey in everything that I do. So every time that I start talking about know, like, and trust, try, buy, repeat, refer, when I say those words, people are like, hold on, let me write that down. And I'm like, you don't have to. Like, there's a whole series of...
It's a magic trick.
Right. They believe that. So what I would love to do today is to really, for our natural product industry listeners, I'd like to go through each of those pieces of the customer journey and what they are and how they might apply to the natural products industries and retailers, really local industry people.
Super. Let's do it.
So let's start with know, like, and trust. It feels like that's the part before we get into sort of transactional pieces.
Yeah. And actually, before we even talk about that chunk, just as a whole, I always like to share with people that those are behavior terms. Those are things we want to do, I think, as buyers. And I think that today, kind of creating demand is gone. It's more about organizing behavior, because even though tons of things have changed in marketing, probably the thing that's changed the most is how people decide to buy, the access to information they have today. So, a lot of what we're trying to do, I think, is now just kind of guide that journey or organize that behavior. So know, like, and trust, I think are behaviors that we want to go through. If you think about it, if you've got a problem or if you're looking for something, you got to know who's out there. We all make kind of that first impression. Do I like what I see? How many of us have gone to websites and gone, ooh, and like not gone any farther, right? And then trust, obviously, once we start getting a little bit serious, we're like, can I trust that they'll do what they say they do? Or, in your particular case, that, they're going to have what I want, or they're going to understand me or my needs. So, that to me that's how you start building the relationship. And so many people want to skip from, hey, come to know about me, buy from me now. And what happens with that is, sometimes you can be successful doing that, but what happens is along the way is that you're going to get the low price shoppers. You're going to get the people don't realize why you charge or should charge a premium for what you do. So if you take the time to build a great journey through those first few steps, you actually can charge more. We've all paid more for what we see as a better experience, right? And so, that's why we feel like you have to be intentional about building campaigns and processes and even content, that's really going to address each of those stages.
Yeah. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about thinking local and what activities might be involved in those stages that can help us, because I think, and Amanda can speak to this as well, but what we've been hearing from our natural product retailers is that they are going up against Amazon and Walmart and the bigger boxes, and they really want a way to show up where they are creating a different kind of experience. And so if we can help them know of little ways that they can follow this know, like, and trust journey, that'd be great.
They all know this. I'm not saying it's easy to execute on, but their secret weapon is information or misinformation, perhaps. So obviously the trust building factor, for example, somebody can come in and they can talk to somebody that they feel like gets them, gets what they're trying to accomplish. And they can, once they build that trust, they can debunk the myths. I mean, go on. I buy on Amazon, but go on Amazon, especially look for natural health products. I mean, it's just an absolute mess. I mean, everybody's promoting anything. All the reviews are paid. People, I mean, there's no way, unless you just absolutely know I'm getting this product from this manufacturer, it's a real jungle. And so I think that, as I said, the secret weapon, of course, they have is that they can build a relationship. They can build the trust. They can actually, somebody will come to them and say, look, I don't know anything about these two things, but my doctor said, maybe I ought to try this supplement or something. And they're going to hopefully develop a relationship with that person where they can say, I know you, and I think I know what your goals are, and you ought to go this way. And I think that's, people no longer will shop price or shop price exclusively when they, feel like they're actually getting advice and counsel.
Yeah. We talk about that all the time on our show about, establishing yourself as the health authority in your community. And I think that's that trust factor is, if you scroll Instagram for even 5 seconds, you're going to get hit by some influencer, pushing a product. And like, even if you follow them and you kind of feel like, oh yeah, I know that person, you've never met them and never will. You start to develop that trust, but it's like when you can establish that locally of like, oh, I can actually go in to that physical brick and mortar location, have those conversations, have that, that connection person to person, which I think we all really crave. And then, from there, the sky's the limit.
And I think also, a retailer's responsibility too, I think, is to make sure they're carrying brands that are very legit, that have the testing and have all the things that are going to make them, really valuable. And I think that's part of the service that they do is just basically on what their inventory is, speaks to a lot of, what they have suggested is good and what's bad, because there's so much junk out there. The FDA doesn't really monitor a lot of products that are marked as natural. And so, that's a big part of just what they carry in their store and are willing to sell and not sell, says a lot about how you can trust them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what I love, John, is you guys have provided a whole cadre of activities that people can put out there and know, like, and trust. And some of the very things that you're talking about would be a great place to start with, like a comparison guide,
or just even education in general. I mean, doing workshops, which I know a lot of your listeners, have understood the value of that. Somebody can come to know about a store based on a topic that they're doing in a workshop. They listen to the person, they think, hey, I like what they're saying. I've spent 45 minutes listening to you now. I trust that you know what you're talking about and you're not just trying to sell me something. And maybe I've even got a sample for you. I mean, so you think about that's know, like, trust, try, maybe buy, in one sort of activity. So, it doesn't have to always just be, we have to do this for this and this for this. You can move people rapidly through that journey with the right tactics.
Yeah. Amanda, have you seen any of this, like, in practical application in the stores that you've worked with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I see it every single day just with sampling,
Yeah.
Samples, I feel like, are one of the most effective things, especially when it's, a food or, a
Right.
protein powder or even like gummy vitamins. Like, just being able to have that tangible thing in front of you, have that person be like, hey, like, have you tried this new protein powder? Here are all of the amazing benefits. And, oh, here's a recipe card that you can take home and make it yourself or try a new flavor. And I think that's, again, you're just establishing that trust. And I think it also goes like, hey, we care about you. We care that we're going to put in the time and effort, give away free product. And that's the thing too. Like, the brands that you carry in your store, they want to support that. And they're going to give you free product if you're like, hey, let's do a demo. Every Tuesday this month, we're going to do a demo. It's like, okay, here's free product. Like, everyone benefits from this.
Then you got to watch those people that come in just on Tuesday to get fed, though, right?
Yeah, one of the things that I've seen in some of the supplement stores that we visit locally is walking in there, and sometimes they'll have deeply discounted products as well. So sometimes when I think of that try segment in the customer journey, a lot of times it's free, but there are some times where it's just like a really low cost of entry to get people introduced to the way that you deliver product and service. So in a store, if there's something that's deeply discounted, especially at the front of the store, it always catches me whenever I'm on my way out and I'm like, ooh, I've been wanting to try something like this. Here's my opportunity. And then you get to talk to the person at the cash register about efficacy, what it does, benefits that they've seen, and other things like that. So I always like try to be some free, some very low cost entry.
I agree 100%. I just add one little detail to that. Help people understand why it is discounted. So, a lot of times people just get in the habit of like, oh, I'm going to go in there and buy the cheap stuff. They'll always have stuff on sale. And really what you're trying to do, obviously in this particular case, because these are consumables and you want them back, make sure that you are, this is a new product. This is something we believe in, and we want to get everybody in the habit, of using. So we are going to, for this month or this holiday or whatever it is, we're going to have a promotion to educate you around this and make it as easy as possible for you to see what we see.
Yeah, absolutely. And here are some of the benefits that you might experience from it. If you do, come back and get more. I love that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And then you go right into repeat, which is, subscriptions and, all the other ways that you get people to come back for sure.
Yeah, we've been talking about subscriptions, which is big in the natural products world right now because these are things that you take for 30 days, maybe 60 days or 90 days before you really start to get the effects from them. And sometimes it's difficult with the payment processors that are for these smaller local retail stores. So we are constantly looking for ways to provide subscriptions that are easier for the stores to sort of implement.
One of the challenges is, we talked about how they have the physical location, they've got the inventory right there. They've got, hopefully, very educated staff to talk about, products. And so that's a real advantage. They still have to compete with some of the expectations that people have now. I mean, Amazon, you know, has subscriptions that, that are very seamless. In fact, if you've got an Alexa device, they'll tell you it's time. They, have free shipping. They have obviously, tons of selection. So, and people don't even have to put their credit card in anymore, right? Because they did it once. So you don't have to be those, but you have to realize that the consumer behavior kind of expects some of those things. So I think a lot of even local retailers need to have an online store if they don't, because that's obviously, a way to make it easier for people who, love your advice, but they don't need it for this because they understand what they've got. So you've got to make it as easy as possible, as fast as possible. The processors are out there, the tools are out there, even, the Stripes, of the world. I mean, that make it very easy to set up subscriptions. And you just have to realize, yeah, maybe it's a little harder for you, but it's kind of the cost now. If you're going to be that, step above an Amazon, you have to at least meet them on certain things that people expect. And I hate to pick on Amazon, it sounds like I am, but I do think that they drive a lot of consumer behavior. Let's face
We
it.
pick on them all the time, so it's fine.
Yeah, absolutely happy to do that. But other ways for repeat buyers to come in, it's not just subscriptions.
No. I mean, subscriptions, as you said, are awesome because there are a lot of times people they know they need the stuff. You've taken that hurdle of them going, oh, I forgot to go to the store and get that, right? So they're awesome. But events, really create a tremendous amount of not only repeat business, but another secret weapon that the local store has is community. So, now if you can bring your customers together who probably have a similar interest in their health, or maybe they have things that they're challenged with that are similar. I mean, bringing those folks together and letting them form a bit of community around your business is a tremendous way to create a defense, if you will, against, some of the big box stores that, that they're never going to, form any kind of community around.
Yeah, we're hearing that more and more too, especially post COVID. So there was obviously a moment in time that was both good and bad for these retailers. They profited from some of it because people started really noticing that there were things in this natural products environment that could help them stay healthy during some of the worst times. So that was good for the business as far as that's concerned. But community was really something that we didn't have a lot of capability to do. But the good news on that is people are craving that more and more. And so there's plenty of opportunity to create that in your local
Yeah.
stores.
Yeah, and I think community, we've always had community, we've churches and schools and things, but those were more about location. Whereas, I think the opportunity they have is community around shared interest and shared topics, and that's a really potent way to form community. But it takes work. I mean, it's not a matter of unlocking the door and saying we're a community. I mean, you've got to have reasons for them to engage. You have to stay with it. You have to be consistent. You have to make sure that, you're communicating effectively about the opportunities that are there. And really, not look at it as an opportunity to sell, but purely to build people that are going to be ambassadors.
Right. Yeah. And I think, these smaller retailers in particular, or even the big ones, they have potential to, develop those customer relationships. Like I had a lady today that was just, I did a recipe video and she just came up to me and was like, I loved your recipe video. That was so great. I was like, I've never met you in my life, but thank you. Like, and like we were able to just start a relationship right then and there on the spot. And like we bonded over something that, I created, she enjoyed, and was able to make herself. And I think that just those little things, and then remembering, okay, mental note, what did she look like? So next time when I'm in the store, it's like, hey, did you see the last recipe that we did? Have you tried that one yet? And just having those little moments that you can remember with those customers, remembering people's names, like all of that just is, again, you'll never get that in these e-commerce type situations. And I think it's a strength that these retailers really have to lean into.
And you kind of opened up another avenue there, just talking about the recipe. I mean, just strategic partners, for the, other businesses that, your customers might also be interested in. You can bring additional value by partnering with them in ways. I mean, the obvious ones are the yoga studios and the the workout facilities and things that go hand in hand with some of the people that are trying to eat healthier and do supplements and things of that nature. And so, really being somewhat aggressive about building a local business community around your business, as well as a customer community, is a great way to, demonstrate you're there for kind of the whole person, the whole value, that you can bring, and not just, sell it. I think, again, that's another thing, Amazon's, since we're picking on them, is not going to, hold a fundraiser for the school up the street, for example. So, doing as much of that as possible is certainly a way that you get people who really feel like, hey, I'm gonna support them.
Yeah, that's a big deal when people feel like when they spend their money with you, that it is coming back into their community that they live and work in and their kids play in. It's a really big deal.
Absolutely. And there definitely are people that feel like that it's part of their social responsibility, frankly, to support those, small businesses. And I heartily agree.
Yeah. And I don't think it's a bad idea, like, just to show that you are giving back to those communities, sponsor local high school sports teams, like have, your company's logo on one of the, the signs that goes on the baseball field and things like that, where it's like, even though that might have only cost you like $400, it's like, we're here, we're in the local community. I don't know what the ROI is on that. I don't even think you could even try to quantify it. It's more just this, we're here supporting our community that supports us.
Yeah, that full page ad in the football program is probably not going to bring in a lot of customers, but no, absolutely. There definitely is a percentage of people that that notice who, who invests in the community, who supports the community. And that's not important to everybody, but it's important to a lot of folks. And I would venture to say that this is a huge generalization, but people who shop at natural food stores are probably a little more socially responsible. Or I shouldn't say responsible, but it's higher on their priorities of, participating in those types of things.
Yes,
Giant
social connection.
generalization there, but
I do think I no, John, I think you're onto something. Social connectedness. Maybe it's not social responsibility, but there's something about being connected and how everything affects everyone in the earth. I think that's a big part of who's shopping in these stores.
yeah, 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 absolutely.
And all of that sort of leads me into this refer category, which I think there's sort of two buckets. And you've been doing this much longer than I have, John. So just correct me or add on if I'm wrong. But the bucket of the people who shop every day can refer you. And there's a whole chain of events that you can have around that. But the other thing that you were talking about is connecting with these other people and places who can refer into your client pool. One of these referrers is that we've seen work really well is holistic medical
Sure,
providers in the
absolutely.
community.
Yeah, no, I mean, makes 100%. I happen to my general practitioner is one of those people, and she will, instead of prescribing something, she'll say, "You might try this," and that's the treatment I want. That's the advice I want. When it's appropriate, and so there's no question that those folks are talking about the things that are on the shelves of these stores, and so there's obviously there's some ethical things about too much of a direct line of, and you should shop here, here's a 5% off coupon. But certainly mentioning the products and where they're available, there's no question that is, they want to send somebody to a place where they're going to get the right thing, and they're going to get one that's been tested thoroughly and all those things. So there's no question that's totally logical connection.
Well, and if I think about how pharmaceuticals get into the hands of our doctors, it's through first samples and also, hey,
A
we're
lot of
going to
bagels, a
train
lot of
you.
bagels.
Yeah, a lot of bagels. But also, we're going to train you, right, on what this product does. And the pharmaceutical industry has used that as a growth tactic for a very long time. I do think there's a way, especially if you're very well educated on this type of magnesium versus that type of magnesium, helping educate the doctor and their staff. Hey, these are the types of, and here's some samples, and you can get it at our store.
Yeah, and another thing, the people that are already 100% bought into that are a natural. I think there's a lot of physicians, especially younger physicians, that are waking up to there's more than one way, to treat folks, but they got no education in medical school on a lot of the stuff you know that are in the supplement category. And so I think that there's a percentage that would be very hungry for, especially, they're very much on research, and unfortunately the pharmaceutical research is much more thorough than than a lot of supplement research. But especially if you can show science backed education, I think that more than happy to really take that education in. I think a growing number of physicians
Yeah,
are.
absolutely. I know personally, a friend of mine, she's been a physician for about 5 years now, and she knows, iron does this in the body, omega 3s are good for this, but she's like, I don't know what quality I should be looking for. I don't know what form of, this particular nutrient other than just kind of just the basics. And so it's like by establishing a relationship with her, it's like, well, hey, just refer them to the local health food store. They know those things. And so it's like, you don't have to sit them down and personally train them on all the things. It's like, just develop enough trust and, where it's like, patient comes in and they're like, yeah, I think I should do this. And it's like, yeah, I think that's a good idea for you. Go over to, the health food store down the street and they'll help you out.
So here's an idea on how to really kind of take that up a notch. So do some outreach to, I mean, every community of any size probably has at least 5 to 8 to 10 doctors or physicians or um, even chiropractors, that have certainly gone down the kind of whole wellness, path. Bring them together and do a roundtable with one of your, I got to believe one of your manufacturers has, what would be a credentialed scientist on staff, that could speak the language, very deeply, and just hold a roundtable around a certain, problem or a certain treatment, or myths around, specific types of treatment. And just by virtue of hosting that group, you will ingratiate yourself with them. And they're going to, look possibly more favorably on sending people your direction. But you'll also just establish a pipeline, of conversation and education, with a group that is a very logical referral source.
I love that.
Yeah. And so that just sort of brings me to this customer journey is not necessarily just about customers. It's also about vendors and partners. Like, this is about building relationships.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is. We like to talk about it as it's an end to end, journey that really impacts truthfully every aspect of the business. Frankly, I mean, you could apply this to the hiring, process inside a store. Having a customer journey or a employee or team member journey that doesn't end, the day they put on the apron or whatever it is. That is a very holistic approach. 100%. This is a framework that there are many, many ways in which you can apply it.
Yeah, and that's huge because right now we know it is tough to find team members to work in retail stores. So if you use this, it really is about creating that relationship to move someone from knowing about who you are to wanting to be a part of what you do.
But then also having an amazing experience, once they're there. I mean, there's all kinds of data recently that's popped up because of, all the people, quitting and can't find, people to work at their organizations, talking about how somebody experiences your business either as a customer or as an employee in the first 90 days is going to dictate, everything about the long-term relationship. And so, really thinking that through. Unfortunately, so many businesses, hiring is way down the list. It's like, oh, we need somebody today. It's like, take applications. Can you show up tomorrow? Here's the packet of information you need. Good luck. Right. And so, and I get it, there's a billion other things. In most small organizations, hiring is nobody's job, or onboarding employees is nobody's job. It's, somebody gets assigned to, like, here, go follow, Bill around the rest of the day, and, and you'll learn how to do this. And so, really creating that amazing experience like you would hope you would do for a customer, for a team member. Because, let's face it, after you get to 5 or 6 people in your organization, that's who people are experiencing your brand from. It's no longer you. And so, you want to make sure that those people are just as jazzed about being there as you are.
And they'll refer other people.
No question. I mean, that's always, for most organizations, that is the absolute best pipeline for employees, but they're not going to do it if they're worried about what they're going to put their friend through.
Yeah. And I love putting these two things side by side because exactly what you just talked about with the 90-day onboarding is the same for customers as well.
You bet.
So just making that a really great experience at the beginning is really important for making your store very sticky.
And I think we failed to mention this probably at this point. If people are still listening to us talk about this thing that we're calling a customer journey, we actually have a name, and you can find tons and tons of research on it because I've been writing about it for at least a decade. It's called the marketing hourglass. So if you just want to, Google that or whatever your favorite search engine is, you'll find lots and lots of more information on just this very topic.
Yeah. And just, John, while we're talking about all the research and work that you've done on the marketing hourglass and the customer journey, tell us some more about your books.
Well, so in 2007, I wrote a book called Duct Tape Marketing, which was really kind of just my distillation of how I felt marketing should be done. Marketing is a system that begins with strategy before tactics. I followed that up with really, to me, in a lot of ways, the most important yet most overlooked aspect of this customer journey, and that is referrals. It's called the referral engine. Most businesses get some word of mouth, some referral business, but very few do anything about it intentionally. I wrote a couple of years ago, I decided to write a self-help book for myself called The Self-Reliant Entrepreneur, which is kind of a daily dive in, read something, hopefully kind of kicks you in the butt a little bit and does pose a question or a prompt for those of you that are journalers. And then most recently, it's probably just an evolution of my marketing thinking. Wrote something called The Ultimate Marketing Engine. And it is, all of my books have this marketing hourglass framework applied to them in some way, shape, or form. But that's kind of a quick journey of my books. They can all be found pretty much wherever you buy books.
So if you're looking for a little bit more information about the marketing hourglass, this customer journey, any of these books would be helpful for you. But also, if anyone listening to the podcast, if you're still with us and you own a business, we're happy to give you a copy. We'll send you a copy of John's book, The Self-Reliant Entrepreneur. I know it changed my life, John. I read that book 2 years straight every single morning. And as a business owner, it really was, I know you said you wrote it as a self-help book for yourself, but really it was so timely. Every single topic, whenever I would open it up and read it for the day, I would be like, John, how are you reading my mail again? So it was really helpful for my soul.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we were able to change your life because you were headed down a really scary path.
I know,
so I'm
right?
glad we brought you back.
Thank you for saving me.
Next thing I know, you're going to start playing the banjo.
Or the bass. I know. Well, it's been so nice having you here. And we usually end our podcast with a few quick questions.
Okay. So John, who do you like to pay attention to? Who do you follow? Who do you read? So you can kind of stay in the know with all things, present day marketing.
There's no simple answer to that for me. I've had my own podcast since 2005. I do 2 episodes a week. And frankly, I read a lot of books. And so I kind of use my podcast as my way because I do get pitched a lot of guests, but I also, am fortunate enough to be able to reach out and say, I want to interview you. And so I that's my short answer. There's no like one source. I feel like my podcast keeps me in everything that's coming out, that's somewhat recent.
Yeah. Awesome. I know that's been really helpful for me too. Of just like, oh, I'm getting fed all this information. This is lovely.
Yeah. I've had more than one guest on that I've just picked their brain basically because I wanted to know like how I could apply what they're doing. So for sure.
Yeah. So if people want to listen to your podcast, how do they do that?
So pretty much everything I've been doing for the last couple of decades is at ducttapemarketing.com. So it's DUCTTAPE marketing.com. You can find it on, iTunes, Spotify, all those kind of places as well. But you can also find the entire catalog, there on the website.
Excellent. So you're not necessarily in the natural products industry, but you are familiar with it. So kind of from the outside looking in, maybe, what are some things that maybe you would possibly change about how natural products marketing is done?
I think there's, and I'm not probably going to say this the right way, but I think there are people that are, that's very science backed. There's certainly a lot of people that have realized I can make a whole bunch of money, by putting out a supplement line, because I'm an influencer and I had like a cooking show somewhere and now I've got like a supplement line. I kind of wish that whole, because as the categories become more popular, like everything, you've got a lot of people in it that, have no business being in it. And so, that, I don't know if I answered your question, but I wish there was a way to really weed that out because I think unfortunately, some of those people are really good marketers.
Right. Well, I think like Jennifer Aniston like now owns like Vital Proteins or something like that. And she came in like after they were well established. And now it's like, well, now you're just the face of the company. It's like, you didn't formulate anything. Like you're just a pretty face on all the ads now. So yeah.
One of the things that I think that brings to the forefront is really that interviewing people and talking greatly about how do you figure out which brands should be trusted and what to look for when you're looking for a good brand. One of the biggest things from our perspective is third-party testing and transparency in what you do. So those are two really great hallmarks. It's this trust signal that you can send by being transparent and open, allowing other people to test your product for efficacy.
Yeah. And some brands have found out the hard way, that eventually customers will know, what the deal is, and they will speak out. So obviously, you even if you're a really great marketer, you can only do that so long.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've been in marketing for how many years now?
Over 30 now. Yeah. Before we had the internet, I like to tell people that, because that's just don't even know how that's possible.
So what would you say is like the single biggest decision that's kind of led to your success as a marketer?
I don't know if it was the decision. A lot of times you look backwards and you go, "Oh, that was a great decision," but you really just sort of fell into it, maybe, or it felt intuitively like the right path. I would say consistency. A lot of platforms have come and gone, and you see a lot of people wanting to be first movers in this space or that space. And I've for 30 years said marketing is a system. It starts with strategy before tactics. Fundamentally, what we are here to do as marketers has not changed.
So what would you tell our listeners here, that whether they have, whether they're a manufacturer or a retailer, what do you think is some low hanging fruit that they could, grab a hold of when it comes to their marketing and capitalize on that?
Well, the first one would be to go to iTunes and give this show an amazing review. I mean, that is the lowest hanging fruit. I would absolutely do that one. 5 stars, of course, is what I'm talking about. After that, I would say, the real missed opportunity that I see for just about every category business is this whole idea of strategic partnering. I mean, there are so many businesses, a lot of times, a customer might be able to refer 1 or 2 people to you, but the right strategic partner might refer 500 or put you in front of thousands of people who could come to know you. And there's a bit of borrowed trust, that's already established in that. So, because you asked me a really broad question, I'll give you a kind of a broad answer, but I always seem to find that that's the easiest, kind of most missed opportunity.
And for a quick win, John, for a local business, what would you say?
I'm guessing a lot of, here's another thing that I see a lot of businesses not doing. I would say the businesses that you're speaking to the most probably don't fit in this, but I would say if you're not getting those testimonials, you're not getting, what we used to call user generated content, meaning, people going onto Facebook, talking about your store, giving them, like, making it really easy to do that, getting those reviews in the third party places where, they need to be. That to me is a huge trust marker, social proof today. And it's probably a pretty low hanging fruit, because you probably you have access to your customers, you're seeing them face to face, and you probably have some really happy ones that you've never asked to do anything.
So if people want to follow up with you, I know you had mentioned the podcast. Is there any other way that people can connect with you?
Well, I'm on, LinkedIn and Facebook and X. It's hard to say that.
It's always Twitter.
but really the launching place, I always say, is just Duct Tape Marketing, DUCTTAPE marketing.com. I do have a newsletter. We have tons of other free resources there. So that's a great place to find out whether you're a business and want to talk to us about marketing. We also license our methodology to consultants and agencies. And so you can find that information as well. And
we are licensed for duct tape marketing. We're certified. So in that process.
You are, Tina. That's right.
All right. Well, John, it's been so great to talk to you. First, thank you so much for giving us your time and the considerable amount of wisdom. I know that everyone in the natural products industry is really going to profit from this conversation.
Well, my pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening to the Natural Products Marketer podcast. We hope you found this episode to be super helpful. Make sure you check out the show notes for any of those valuable resources that we mentioned on today's episode.
And before you go, we would love for you to give us a review, follow, like, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening today. And make sure you join us for our next episode where we give you more marketing tips so that you can reach more people and change more lives.